Week 24, the second to last full week of the NBA 2021-22 season is over, which means it's time to run it back. This is Run It Back, NBA Week in Review.
The voice of the fan. Drop a bounce pass, throw down the rim rocker. Lay up off the glass, right past the shot blocker. I follow through like Kobe's is money. You can cash it. For news on LA hoops, come over to Beach Basket. Up to date sports, post game reports, debates and play-by-play coming straight off the court. The voice of the fan making noise, causing havoc. Zone a man up, you can ask Peach Basket. The Peach Basket, coming tune on there. The Peach Basket, where the news begins. We're dropping news like we're in the stands. Creative views from the average fans.
This is the show where we recap the week that was, then take a deep dive into that week for select teams. Tonight, we'll highlight the best performers of week 24, take a deep dive into the week for the LA Clippers and LA Lakers, then discuss the NBA question of the day. Week 24, though, falls in the month of March, which means it's time for March Madness. College basketball fans, join the action on the court during the biggest tournament of the year with DraftKings Sportsbook. Turn your team's victory into your own big win. New customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $200 in free bets. If they do, it's that simple. If they win, you win. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TBPN. Bet $5 on any college hoops team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. If they win, you win. With promo code TBPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, let's start by taking a look back at the best performers of week 24. These are the players that averaged the most in 5 categories: the best scoring, rebounding, assists, steals, and blocks averaged in week 24. What's cool about this week is that teams are letting some young guns get some run. You'll recognize 2 of these top performers, but the others, well, you may not know their names, but they are the top performers of the week. The first one really doesn't need any introduction. LeBron James is leading the NBA in scoring in his 19th season. He's amazing. Here's some highlights of what he did in week 24.
New Orleans Pelicans. LeBron. Rainbow 3 is good. A few games ago at New Orleans. Here's LBJ.
Another look at that LeBron fallback 3-point.
Now, Saben Lee, you may not know. He was selected 38th overall by the Utah Jazz in the 2020 NBA draft, then subsequently traded to the Detroit Pistons. He spent time with their G League affiliate and shined in this game in week 24, leading the NBA in week 24 with 12 assists.
Finish inside by Key. Supersized point. Nice steal there by Saben Lee. He fires it off the court, and that'll be a finish on the fast break.
Jalen Howard might be another name you don't know. He went undrafted in the 2019 NBA draft, spent some time with the Blazers, and is now in his second 10-day contract with the Thunder. In week 24, he became only the 6th Thunder player to ever hold down 20 rebounds. No offense to Dennis Schroeder, we don't have a lot to say about him. You know who he is. He led the NBA in week 24 with 4 steals. Now, the blocks leader you may not know, DeMarco Pickett, was a brick wall for the Pistons in week 24. He went undrafted in 2021 and is on a 2-day contract with Detroit. Congratulations to the best to do it in week 24 of the NBA 2021-22 season. Now it's time to drop the pin in Los Angeles and talk Los Angeles Lakers basketball. It pains me to do this. It really does. The Lakers, after having a really good week 23, and shouldn't really call it a really good week 23. They had a better than average week 23 for them. And this has not been a great season. If you follow the Lakers, well, week 24 was just horrible, as you can tell by their record. And the thing about week 24 is the team knew that these were must-win games. They had to beat the Pelicans. They didn't do it. They had Anthony Davis back. Russell Westbrook seemed to start to get a feel for what he needed to do with this team. It just didn't work. And Laker Twitter is upset, and understandably so. There's a lot of blame to go around. I think Coach Vogel gets a lot of it. I don't know that he is necessarily, the biggest culprit. You're always going to be able to nitpick a coach when a team, is in the 11th and 12th spot. It doesn't really matter who you are. Maybe unless you're Coach Popovich, you're going to be able to nitpick a coach. But the reality of it is the team just doesn't fit together. You've got players that kind of play the same way. And for the greatness of LeBron James, there's no denying that it takes a special type of player to play with him. He is a bit of a vacuum. When LeBron comes in, he's going to take points away, shots away, time away from other players. And you've got to be able to understand that. When Anthony Davis came onto the team, LeBron made a point to say, this is, he's the best player on the team. Not necessarily this is his team, but Anthony Davis has to be the best player on the team. LeBron understood that. Anthony Davis understood that and took that on, to his credit. And in their 2020 championship season, the team was amazing defensively. They had two great alpha players, and they were surrounded by a team of really, really good role players that understood their place on that team and played phenomenal defense. This team just isn't that. There's just no other way to cut it. They're just not that. They're not good defensively. They're not good offensively. And I understand that LeBron is leading the NBA in scoring. We just went over it. We just saw that. But offensively, the team defers to him sometimes. There's no movement. They don't look like a cohesive unit. You rarely get, a highlight from the Lakers that just, leaves you going, wow, that was great teamwork, great ball movement, great cutting. There's not a whole lot of that. There's flashes of it, but that's just not who they are. This team doesn't have an identity, and it's rough, man. It's rough. This team came into the season, with all these all-stars and all these expectations, and they're going to end the season, it looks like, very likely outside of the playoffs. And this is now, where you could finish in the 9th, 10th spot, 11th spot, and still have a shot. And the Lakers are 9th, 10th spot rather. And the Lakers might very well be on the outside looking in. The record is what the record is. The news is, that Anthony Davis is back. Obviously, he's going to take some time to get acclimated. He looked really good in his first game initially, and then seemed to tire, which is going to happen. The biggest thing about the Lakers as we kind of recap their week is the concern. It might be over for them this season. And most troubling is that there's not a lot of flexibility next season, unless they're able to offload one of these big contracts, Westbrook, AD, LeBron, who, I don't think they're going to trade him. I think it's silly, but you've got to be whiteboarding that possibility, at least if you're the Lakers front office. Evan Moore wrote a great article. We will link to it today, or we'll link to it when we post this video about, the Lakers season. He recaps it, and he's kind of waving the white flag. He still has a little glimmer of hope, but not what he had before. It was just really a disappointing season. I am close to dropping an article that shows why this is the second worst Lakers season in Laker franchise history, which is saying something. Look for that in the next couple of days. Fingers crossed. So not great in Los Angeles, at least not for the Lakers. We're going to stay in LA and talk Clippers basketball. The Clippers are, in a lot of ways, kind of mirrored the Lakers. Here's what I mean by that. aside from the fact that they both play in LA and both play in the same arena, they both had key players out for a good chunk of the season. Paul George missed a lot of games. Kawhi Leonard missed a lot of games. They trade for Norman Powell. He misses games. It's almost comical. The difference, though, I think, between the Lakers and the Clippers this season is that the Clippers found an identity. There's a cohesion there. They look good. They look good defensively is what I was going to say. But what they do is they work hard defensively. On offense, excuse me, regardless of who's in, who's out, you kind of see the same movement, the same plays. There's the old adage, right? Next man up. The Clippers have really taken that to heart. When somebody goes down, they just put another player in that position, and you're meant to, do the same thing that other player was meant to do. It doesn't mean you're going to, average Kawhi numbers or Paul George numbers, although Robert Covington certainly did that and more in last night's game. The Clippers have a process, right, that seems to work really well. And they don't have a lot of players that don't necessarily complement each other. That, I think, is at the heart of the problem for the Lakers. The Clippers pieces fit together, and they are, talk about Clipper news now, just starting to bring in some of these big guns. Paul George is back. He rested yesterday, but he's back. We don't know anything about Kawhi, and anybody who tells you they know anything about Kawhi is lying to you. The Clippers, as a franchise rule, just keep things, under the covers. They're not going to divulge what's happening. Kawhi, I get the sense, doesn't want that to be shared anyway. So I think we're just going to hear, via tweet, one day that Kawhi is back and ready, just like we did for Paul George. Now, if Kawhi can come back, and Norman Powell can come back, and Paul George can back, he is back. Lots of ifs, but if all of that can happen, this team has built up so much confidence. Has gotten these, the young guys, the guys like Amir Coffey, Luke Kennard, Isaiah Hartenstein, Terrence Mann. These guys have gotten confidence and they've looked really good. And you bring in these studs like Kawhi and PG and Norman Powell. I mean, that's impressive. It could be pretty good for the Clippers. If all of those pieces fall into place. Let's see if they do or not. They had a good week, a 2-1 week, but again, I think what's most impressive for the Los Angeles Clippers is that they play well. They're never out of a game. They show heart, they show hustle, and they are in a good spot as they head into the playoffs. The play-in tournament for sure to start, and then the playoffs. Unfortunately, unlike the Los Angeles Lakers. Hurts me to say it. It really does, but that's the way it is. Before we get to the question of the day, I wanted to just remind you real quick to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Now use promo code TBPN. Bet $5 on any college hoops team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. If they win, you win with promo code TBPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, let's talk NBA question of the day. I asked this, and I always hope to have some conversation around it. The real fun part of having a question is to have some debate around it. Although I'm not certain that there'd be a lot of debate about this. The question is, you see it in front of you. If you're watching, if you're not, I'm sorry. And the question is, what's the biggest shock of the 2021-22 season? Some seasons come and go, and there really isn't a shock. Things kind of went the way they expected. The favorites are winning. The teams that weren't the favorites aren't, and there's not a whole lot of drama. This season, there's been some drama. On the heels of two of the weirdest NBA seasons in the history of the NBA in 2020 and 2021. 2022 has been weird, not in the sense that we've got less games or we're playing in a bubble or we've got 1,500 people in the stands, but because the teams that were expected to do well aren't, and some teams that weren't expected to do well are. It's the kind of thing you generally don't see in the NBA. at the start of the season, the two teams that were favored to win it all were the Los Angeles Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets look like they're pretty sure to get into the play-in. The Lakers, like we know, are fighting for their lives right now and likely won't make it. It's pretty shocking to me to look at that, just how off the odds makers were. And we were, and thinking that, this team would fit together in LA. Of course, in Brooklyn, you had a different set of dramas with Kyrie not being able to play and then the trade. A lot went on. But that's got to be the biggest shock. Now, second tier shock is the fact that some teams that were perennially pretty bad have done pretty good. The Timberwolves, I'm going to stay in the West, have done well. What you'll see generally in most NBA seasons is you'll see a team play really good to start and then just kind of peter off at the end. The Timberwolves never did, and they're looking really good. They're looking really confident as they head into the play-in tournament, which is exciting. It's good to have a good team in Minnesota, and it's good to see them kind of grow. So I'm not saying that's necessarily a shock, but not as big a shock as the Lakers and the Nets, but it certainly belongs in the conversation. So there've been some interesting things in this interesting season. Those to me are the biggest shocks, though. Overall, would love to hear your thoughts. That is it in terms of what we wanted to talk about for the show. But what I want to do now before we finish is, with the season winding down and the fact that it's just me tonight, I wanted to take a little bit of time to tell you a little bit about us. It's not something I've done before, but I'm excited about how things have gone this season and really want to share a little bit about where we're going. I wrote some things down. Forgive me for reading them. I'm not a big fan of doing that, but I want to make sure I don't miss anything. The Peach Basket was started so that I could write about teams I knew well. After writing for other sites for a while, I got kind of frustrated by the constraints that other sites put on me in terms of what I could write about, when I could write, how often I could write, etc. I wanted to write when I wanted to write about the things I wanted to write about. So that was really where the site started. Over time, we brought in more contributors and surprisingly started to grow. Today, we have over 50 contributors throughout the U.S. We've got a few contributors outside of the United States, and we've branched out to include podcasts, streaming, social media, and more. This season, we saw our very first writer credentialed for an NBA game, which is phenomenal. Somebody actually went to an NBA game with a Peach Basket badge and covered the game for the NBA, which is exciting. It's the first of many to come, I'm sure. And we're excited to once again partner with the Basketball League, a growing minor league with franchises throughout the USA. We are going to, in our partnership with them, we're going to attend games. We're going to interview players. We're going to promote this phenomenal minor league team or minor league that really is community based. And these are professional basketball players that are, on par, if not just a little below the G League. Very, very exciting for us to partner with them. So if you're reading, listening, and watching, if you're interested, if you like reading, listening, and watching original fan-based basketball content, consider going to thepeachbasket.net. That's what we're all about. Also, though, if you've ever been curious about writing, podcasting, streaming, or live tweeting games, reach out to us at thepeachbasket.net. We mean it when we say that we exist to amplify the voice of passionate basketball fans. We're growing and we would love to have you come along for the ride. So if you have an interest, if you've always been curious about, what it would be like, reach out. I would love to give you more information and have you come with us and join us in the 2022-23 season. All right, that's it. That's the pitch. Thanks for listening. Hope that didn't bore you too much. It's certainly something we want to promote more and more because I'm real excited about the site, where it started, where it's at, and where it's going. Week 24 is in the books. Join us next week when we run back Week 25, the last full season of the NBA 2021-22 season.
The voice
Thanks
of
for
the
watching.
fan.
Thanks for listening.
Drop a bounce pass, throw down the rim rocker. Lay up off the glass right past the shot blocker. I follow through like Kobe's is money. You can cash it. For news on LA hoops, come over to Beach Basket. Up-to-date sports, post-game reports, debates and play-by-play coming straight off the court. The voice of the fan making noise, causing havoc. Zone a man up, you can ask Peach Basket. The Peach Basket, coming tune on there.